To bulk import multiple cars from a CSV document, first navigate to the Vehicle Stock page from the left-hand menu. Then navigate to the Import Stock button in the top right-hand corner. First select the location of the vehicles, whether they are on-site or expected in the Status drop-down menu. If all the vehicles are going into an auction, you can select an upcoming auction to enter them to now using the auction drop-down. However, this is optional and you can choose to enter the vehicles into general stock without placing them in an auction by leaving this box empty. Now we can import our vehicles by clicking the Choose File button to select a file and then clicking Import File to begin the mapping process. Our next task is to make sure that the data we are importing is read correctly by our system. We will do this by mapping our CSV columns to our database columns. First, we need to select which field in our CSV matches the vendor. In the vendor field, use the drop-down to select which of our CSV columns matches the vendor. If all our vehicles come from the same vendor, we can search for this vendor in the field on the right. We can also see more information about this vendor by clicking the Info button. If both vendor fields are set, we will default to setting the vendor based on the information in the CSV. To make sure that we import the rest of the data from the CSV correctly, we need to make sure that the column headers of the CSV file correctly match our database. In this form, the field names match the headers in our CSV, and the options in the drop-down boxes represent the columns in our database. If our CSV file doesn't have any column headers, we should click the Exclude First Row button to unset it and include the first row of data. This is set automatically as it assumes your CSV has headers, which we don't want to import into our database. In the case that we don't have headers for our columns, instead of showing you the header titles on the form, we will show you the first line of data to do your mapping with. However, our CSV files does have headers, so let's begin mapping. In this form, none of the fields are mandatory except for the car registration, and the program will do its best to guess which field matches with which. However, we should still review them to make sure they match correctly. Once we've finished reviewing our mapping, let's click Import File to move to the next step. Now we should review our vehicles going into stock. If a vehicle does not fail the HPI lookup and is already in our system, its row will appear green in the table. If a vehicle fails its HPI lookup, it will appear in red, and if it already exists in the database, it will appear in yellow. If we want a record of this data, at this point we can click the Export Table button and download a document with this information. However, once we have saved the vehicles, we won't be able to do this, so if we want to do it, it is important that we do it now. For the green row vehicles, we only need to set the VAT status, whether or not the V5 is present, and the V5 order status using the drop-down menus in the table. Once we've done this, we can click Save to add our vehicle into the database. At this point, we can see any HPI flags on the vehicle. For the red and yellow row vehicles, we need to use the drop-down menus in the first column to decide on our next action. We should either skip these vehicles or create a record anyway. For the vehicles you want to create a record for, set the VAT and V5 columns and then click Save. Now, if we go to the vehicle stock page and search for one of our vehicles, we can see that it has been entered into stock.